Introduction. Madison sat in her therapist's office at age 35, clutching a tissue as she recounted the same familiar story she'd been telling herself for decades. She was lazy. She was disorganized. She just wasn't trying hard enough. Despite holding a master's degree and successfully raising 2 children, she felt like a fraud who was constantly one mistake away from everyone discovering she didn't have her life together. "I watch other women juggle everything so effortlessly," she said, her voice breaking. "They remember school events, keep their houses clean, finish projects on time. I start 10 things and finish 2. I forget important conversations 5 minutes after having them. I must just be fundamentally flawed." Her therapist leaned forward gently. "What if I told you that everything you've been calling a character flaw might actually be symptoms of ADHD?" That single question shattered 35 years of self-blame and opened the door to a truth Madison had never considered. Within months, she had her diagnosis. But here's what surprised her most: the real transformation didn't come from finally having a name for her struggles. It came from what happened next, when she learned to work with her brain instead of against it, when she discovered that her ADHD traits could become her greatest strengths, and when she finally stopped apologizing for being different and started celebrating it. Today, Madison runs a successful consulting business that leverages her ability to see patterns others miss. She's developed systems that work with her brain's natural rhythms rather than fighting them. Most importantly, she's released decades of shame and stepped into an authentic life that feels sustainable and joyful. The woman who once believed she was broken now knows she was simply misunderstood, by others and by herself. If Madison's story resonates with you, you're not alone. Millions of women discover their ADHD in adulthood, often after years of feeling like they're failing at life despite their best efforts. The diagnosis brings relief, but it also raises a crucial question: now what? Your roadmap to strategic mastery. This book exists to guide you through the complete transformation that becomes possible once you understand your ADHD brain, not as something broken that needs fixing, but as a unique operating system that requires different strategies to unlock its full potential. Too many women get their ADHD diagnosis and then find themselves stuck in the same patterns, just with a new label. They continue to struggle with organization, time management, and emotional regulation because they're still trying to force their brains into neurotypical molds. This book takes a radically different approach. Instead of teaching you to compensate for your deficits, you'll learn to leverage your cognitive strengths. Rather than helping you survive with ADHD, this book will show you how to thrive because of it. You'll move from survival mode, where you're constantly putting out fires and feeling overwhelmed, to strategic mastery, where you design life systems that work seamlessly with your brain's natural patterns. The goal isn't to make you more like everyone else. It's to help you become the most powerful, authentic version of yourself. You'll discover how to transform from feeling broken and misunderstood to having crystal clear clarity about your struggles and a concrete path forward. You'll develop practical, proven systems to manage ADHD symptoms while building unshakable confidence in your unique abilities. Most importantly, you'll release the shame and regret from years of perceived failing and create an authentic life that honors your brain rather than fighting it. The woman ready to stop apologizing. This book is specifically written for women who have been diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood, whether that happened last week or several years ago. You might be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or beyond. What unites you isn't your age, but your experience of finally having answers to questions you've been asking your entire life. You're the woman who has always felt like she was swimming upstream, while everyone else glided effortlessly downstream. You've probably been called too sensitive, too intense, or too much throughout your life. You might have developed sophisticated masking strategies that allowed you to appear successful on the outside while feeling chaotic on the inside. Perhaps you were the straight-A student who couldn't keep her room clean, the perfectionist who procrastinated until the last minute, or the creative powerhouse who struggled with basic life skills. You might have been labeled as the dreamer, the scattered one, or the person who has so much potential if only she could focus. You're tired of apologizing for your differences. You're exhausted from trying to squeeze your square peg brain into round hole expectations. You've spent years believing that if you just tried harder, organized better, or disciplined yourself more, you'd finally get your life together like everyone else. But here's what makes you perfect for this journey. You're ready to stop seeing your ADHD as something to overcome and start viewing it as something to master. You're prepared to challenge the narrative that you're fundamentally flawed and open to discovering that you might actually be fundamentally powerful in ways you've never recognized. This book is for the woman who wants more than coping strategies. She wants transformation. You're not looking for quick fixes or band-aid solutions. You're ready to do the deeper work of reimagining your relationship with your brain and designing a life that feels authentic, sustainable, and joyful. A revolutionary approach. Most ADHD resources focus on symptom management and deficit correction. They teach you how to organize your scattered brain, how to pay attention despite your wandering mind, and how to regulate emotions that feel too big for your body. While these approaches have their place, they're built on a fundamental assumption that your ADHD brain is broken and needs fixing. This book operates from an entirely different premise. Your ADHD brain isn't broken, it's different. And different doesn't mean deficient, it means distinctive. The traits that have caused you struggle in traditional environments can become your greatest assets when you learn to leverage them strategically. Neuroscience meets feminine wisdom. This approach uniquely combines cutting-edge neuroscience research with an understanding of feminine wisdom and intuition. You'll learn not just what your brain is doing, but why it's doing it and how to work with its natural patterns. We'll explore how hormones, social conditioning, and cultural expectations create additional layers of complexity for women with ADHD that most resources ignore. Beyond gender-neutral solutions. Women with ADHD face unique challenges that generic, often male-focused research doesn't address. Hormonal fluctuations affect ADHD symptoms in ways that can feel mystifying. Social expectations around organization, multitasking, and emotional labor create additional pressure. The tendency to internalize struggles rather than externalize them leads to anxiety and depression at higher rates than men with ADHD. This book acknowledges these realities and provides strategies specifically designed for the female ADHD experience. You'll learn how to work with your hormonal cycles, navigate social expectations without losing yourself, and transform internalized criticism into self-compassion and strength. Life design, not life management. Rather than teaching you to manage your ADHD symptoms, this book focuses on designing life systems that make symptom management largely unnecessary. Instead of learning better organizational skills, you'll discover how to create environments where your natural patterns lead to organization. Rather than forcing yourself to focus, you'll learn to structure your life around your attention patterns. This is the difference between accommodation and optimization. Accommodation helps you survive in systems designed for other brains. Optimization helps you create systems designed for your brain, where you don't just survive, you excel. Your transformation journey. This book will take you on a carefully structured journey from confusion to clarity, from surviving to thriving, from hiding your differences to celebrating them. Each chapter builds on the previous one, creating a comprehensive transformation that touches every area of your life. Understanding your unique operating system. We'll begin by helping you truly understand your ADHD brain, not as a collection of symptoms, but as a sophisticated operating system with its own logic, patterns, and strengths. You'll discover why traditional strategies haven't worked for you, and learn to identify your specific ADHD presentation and cognitive patterns. Mastering your brain's natural rhythms. Once you understand how your brain works, you'll learn to master its patterns rather than fight them. This includes discovering your optimal attention cycles, energy management strategies, and emotional regulation techniques that feel natural rather than forced. You'll develop what I call strategic self-awareness, the ability to predict and prepare for your brain's patterns rather than being surprised by them. Rebuilding your relationship with yourself. Years of feeling different and difficult create deep wounds that a diagnosis alone cannot heal. You'll learn to release shame, rebuild confidence, and develop a compassionate relationship with yourself. This phase focuses on transforming your internal narrative from criticism to celebration. Designing your authentic life systems. With a solid foundation of self-understanding and self-compassion, you'll learn to design life systems that work seamlessly with your brain. This includes everything from daily routines and organizational systems to career choices and relationship dynamics. You'll create what I call your ADHD advantage architecture, a life structure that turns your perceived weaknesses into undeniable strengths. Sustaining your transformation. Finally, you'll learn to maintain and evolve your new systems as your life changes. You'll develop the skills to troubleshoot challenges, adapt to new circumstances, and continue growing into your authentic power. Throughout this journey, you'll encounter real stories from women who have walked this path before you. You'll complete assessments and exercises designed to personalize every strategy to your unique brain and circumstances. Most importantly, you'll develop an unshakable confidence in your ability to create a life that works with your brain, not against it. Your moment of choice. You stand at a crossroads. Behind you lies a path of struggle, self-doubt, and trying to force your beautiful, complex brain into boxes that were never designed for it. Ahead lies a journey of discovery, empowerment, and authentic success that honors who you truly are. Everything you've been told about your limitations, that you're too scattered, too sensitive, too much, has been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how your brain works. You've been trying to run sophisticated software on the wrong operating system, then blaming yourself when it didn't work smoothly. It's time to challenge everything you've believed about your struggles and discover the power that's been hiding beneath them. Your ADHD brain isn't a consolation prize or a burden to bear, it's a competitive advantage waiting to be unleashed. The woman you're meant to become is already inside you. She's the one who sees connections others miss, who brings creativity to problems that stump linear thinkers, who feels deeply and loves fiercely. She's been waiting for you to stop apologizing for her existence and start celebrating her gifts. This book is your invitation to meet her, to learn her language, and to design a life worthy of her brilliance. The journey won't always be easy, but it will be worth it. Because on the other side of this transformation lies not just a better way to manage your ADHD, but a completely reimagined relationship with your brain, yourself, and your unlimited potential. Are you ready to stop surviving and start thriving? Are you prepared to transform confusion into clarity, shame into strength, and perceived limitations into undeniable advantages? Your journey to strategic mastery begins now. Turn the page, and let's discover the power you've had all along. 1. The Great Masquerade: Why Your ADHD Stayed Hidden So Long. Women's ADHD hides in plain sight. For decades, ADHD research focused primarily on hyperactive boys who couldn't sit still in classrooms. This created a narrow diagnostic lens that missed millions of women and girls whose ADHD manifested differently, through internal restlessness, emotional overwhelm, and perfectionist tendencies rather than obvious disruptive behavior. The traditional picture of ADHD painted a specific portrait: a young boy bouncing off classroom walls, blurting out answers, and getting into trouble for his inability to follow rules. This stereotype became so deeply ingrained in medical training and public consciousness that it effectively rendered invisible an entire population of girls and women whose struggles looked completely different. The invisible presentation. Women's ADHD often presents as what researchers now call the inattentive type, but even this clinical term fails to capture the full complexity of how ADHD shows up in female brains. While boys might throw paper airplanes during math class, girls with ADHD were more likely to sit quietly while their minds wandered through elaborate daydreams or spiraled into anxious thoughts about upcoming assignments. Internalizing symptoms. women often experience hyperactivity as internal mental chatter, anxiety, or emotional intensity rather than physical restlessness. Masking through compliance. Girls learn early to appear attentive and well-behaved while their minds race with distracting thoughts. Late emerging challenges. Many women's ADHD becomes apparent only when life demands increase, during college, career advancement, or motherhood. Penelope spent 35 years believing she was simply too sensitive and not organized enough. While her male colleagues received ADHD diagnoses in elementary school after disrupting classes, her struggles with time management, emotional regulation, and overwhelm were attributed to being dramatic or scattered. It wasn't until her daughter received an ADHD diagnosis that Penelope recognized her own symptoms reflected in the research about girls and women. The realization was both validating and heartbreaking. Decades of self-criticism could have been avoided with proper understanding and support. The perfectionist paradox. Many women with undiagnosed ADHD develop what appears to be perfectionism as a coping mechanism. They learn early that making mistakes brings negative attention, so they pour excessive energy into avoiding errors. This creates an exhausting cycle where they work twice as hard as their peers to produce the same results, all while battling internal chaos that no one else can see. This perfectionist mask often delays diagnosis even further. Teachers, parents, and eventually employers see a woman who gets things done and meets expectations. They don't see the hours of paralysis before starting a project, the elaborate systems needed to remember basic tasks, or the emotional meltdowns that happen behind closed doors when the mask finally slips. Penelope remembers spending entire weekends on assignments that should have taken a few hours, not because the work was difficult, but because she couldn't focus long enough to make meaningful progress. She would start strong, then find herself reorganizing her entire room, researching tangential topics for hours, or becoming paralyzed by the fear of not doing the work perfectly. Her teachers praised her thorough research and attention to detail, never suspecting that what looked like dedication was actually executive dysfunction in disguise. The social camouflage effect. Girls typically develop stronger social awareness than boys, which means they become expert observers of what behavior is expected and acceptable. This social intelligence becomes both a blessing and a curse for girls with ADHD. They learn to read social cues and adapt their behavior accordingly, but this constant monitoring and adjusting is mentally exhausting. The ability to mask ADHD symptoms through social mimicry means that many women become incredibly skilled at appearing neurotypical in professional and social settings. They watch how others organize their desks, manage their time, and handle stress, then try to replicate these behaviors even when they don't come naturally. This masking ability often breaks down during major life transitions. College brings increased independence and responsibility. Career advancement adds layers of complexity to daily management. Motherhood introduces sleep deprivation and constant interruptions to already struggling executive function systems. The hormone connection. Women's ADHD symptoms are uniquely impacted by hormonal fluctuations throughout their lives. Estrogen affects dopamine and norepinephrine, the same neurotransmitters involved in ADHD, which means that monthly cycles, pregnancy, and menopause can dramatically change how symptoms present. Many women first notice their ADHD symptoms becoming unmanageable during perimenopause, when declining estrogen levels unmask attention and executive function challenges that were previously manageable. Others find that their symptoms worsen significantly during certain phases of their menstrual cycle or after pregnancy. Penelope always struggled with focus and organization, but she managed to keep things together through high school and college with elaborate systems and sheer determination. It wasn't until her second pregnancy that her coping mechanisms completely fell apart. The combination of pregnancy hormones, sleep disruption, and increased life complexity created the perfect storm that finally revealed her underlying ADHD. She describes feeling like her brain had been hijacked. Suddenly, strategies that had worked for years were completely ineffective. The emotional intensity factor. Women with ADHD often experience intense emotional responses that can be mistaken for other conditions entirely. Rejection sensitivity, emotional dysregulation, and mood swings might lead to misdiagnosis of anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder. While these conditions can co-occur with ADHD, treating them without addressing the underlying attention and executive function challenges often provides only partial relief. This emotional intensity isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's a neurological feature of how ADHD brains process information and respond to stimuli. Understanding this distinction becomes crucial for developing effective management strategies and building self-compassion. Breaking through the invisibility. Recognition is the first step toward reclaiming your life from decades of misunderstanding. When you begin to see your struggles through the lens of ADHD rather than personal failure, everything changes. The shame circuit that we'll explore in our next chapter begins to rewire itself from self-blame toward self-understanding. Your journey to finally being understood starts with understanding yourself. Masks of excellence versus raw truth. Many high-achieving women with ADHD develop sophisticated masking strategies that hide their struggles behind impressive accomplishments. This perfectionist facade often delays diagnosis because external success masks internal chaos, creating an exhausting cycle of overcompensation that ultimately becomes unsustainable. The world sees a polished professional who never misses deadlines, delivers exceptional work, and seems to have everything under control. What the world doesn't see is the woman behind the mask, the one who works until midnight to complete tasks that should take 2 hours, the one who rewrites emails 15 times before sending them, the one who maintains elaborate backup systems because she can't trust her brain to remember important details. The architecture of overcompensation. Women with undiagnosed ADHD often become masters of overcompensation, developing complex systems and strategies that allow them to meet and exceed expectations despite their neurological challenges. This overcompensation typically manifests in several key patterns that create the illusion of effortless success while demanding enormous amounts of mental and physical energy. Overcompensation patterns: working twice as hard to achieve the same results, staying up late to complete tasks that should take half the time. Imposter syndrome amplification: constant fear of being found out as disorganized or incompetent despite evidence of success. Burnout inevitability: the energy required to maintain perfectionist standards while fighting ADHD symptoms leads to eventual breakdown. Rachel was the star employee everyone envied, always prepared, never missing deadlines, seemingly effortless in her success. What no one saw was her staying up until 2 a.m. reorganizing presentations she had already completed, her bathroom crying sessions between meetings, or her elaborate systems of color-coded calendars and reminder apps. When she finally burned out at age 42, her therapist helped her understand that her high standards were actually exhausting compensation strategies for undiagnosed ADHD. Learning to work with her brain rather than against it transformed not just her productivity, but her relationship with herself. The perfectionist prison. The perfectionist mask becomes a prison of its own making. What starts as a strategy to avoid criticism and negative attention evolves into an identity that feels impossible to shed. These women become known as the reliable ones, the detail-oriented ones, the ones who always go above and beyond. The praise and recognition that comes from this reputation becomes addictive, even as the effort required to maintain it becomes increasingly unsustainable. This perfectionist identity often begins in childhood, when girls with ADHD learn that making mistakes brings negative attention from teachers and parents. Unlike boys whose disruptive behavior leads to earlier identification and support, girls often internalize the message that their struggles are character flaws that must be hidden. They develop an acute sensitivity to criticism and an overwhelming fear of disappointing others. The perfectionist mask requires constant vigilance. These women spend enormous amounts of mental energy monitoring their performance, checking and rechecking their work, and anticipating potential problems before they occur. They become hypervigilant about their image and reputation, always conscious of how others perceive them. Rachel describes her workday as feeling like she was performing in a play where everyone else had been given the script except her. She would study her colleagues' behavior, taking mental notes about how they organized their desks, structured their presentations, and interacted in meetings. She became skilled at mimicking behaviors that seemed effective, even when those approaches didn't align with her natural thinking patterns. The energy economics of masking. Maintaining a perfectionist facade while managing ADHD symptoms creates an unsustainable energy deficit. Every task requires extra steps, extra checking, extra time. Simple activities that neurotypical individuals complete automatically become elaborate processes requiring conscious attention and effort. Consider the basic task of responding to emails. A neurotypical person might read an email, formulate a response, type it out, and send it within a few minutes. A woman masking ADHD symptoms might read the email multiple times to ensure she understands it completely, draft several versions of her response, check for typos and tone, revise the message to sound more professional, reread it several more times, and then feel anxious about sending it. What should be a 5-minute task becomes a 30-minute ordeal that leaves her mentally exhausted. This energy drain compounds throughout the day. By evening, these women are often completely depleted, having spent their entire cognitive reserve maintaining their professional mask. They might come home and collapse, unable to manage basic household tasks or engage meaningfully with family members. The imposter syndrome amplifier. Imposter syndrome affects many high-achieving individuals, but for women with undiagnosed ADHD, it reaches particularly intense levels. They know how much extra effort their accomplishments require compared to their peers, and they live in constant fear that someone will discover their struggles and realize they're not as competent as they appear. This fear creates a vicious cycle. The more successful they become, the more they fear being exposed as frauds. Each promotion, recognition, or achievement increases their anxiety about maintaining their image. They attribute their success to luck, timing, or their ability to fool others rather than recognizing their genuine talents and capabilities. Rachel remembers the constant anxiety that someone would ask her to explain her organizational system, or would notice that she took longer to complete certain tasks. She developed elaborate excuses and diversionary tactics to hide her struggles. When colleagues complimented her thoroughness, she felt like she was deceiving them because she knew her attention to detail was actually anxiety-driven checking and rechecking. The breaking point approaches. The perfectionist masking strategy works until it doesn't. Life changes, promotions, relationship shifts, health challenges, or increased responsibilities can push these carefully constructed systems beyond their limits. What once felt manageable becomes overwhelming, and the mask begins to crack. Many women experience their first recognition of ADHD symptoms during major life transitions, when their existing coping strategies prove inadequate for new challenges. The demands of motherhood, career advancement, or caring for aging parents can reveal the hidden struggles that perfectionist strategies had previously concealed. Recognizing the costs. Understanding the true cost of perfectionist masking becomes essential for moving toward authentic success and sustainable well-being. The shame circuit that we'll explore in our next chapter often develops from years of believing that extraordinary effort should produce ordinary results, leading to deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and self-blame. Your mask of excellence has protected you, but it has also hidden your truth. Estrogen's wild ride through ADHD life. Estrogen plays a crucial role in dopamine regulation, which means women with ADHD experience symptom fluctuations that correspond to hormonal changes throughout their lives. These patterns often confuse both women and their healthcare providers, leading to misdiagnosis or delayed recognition of ADHD. The relationship between estrogen and ADHD symptoms creates a complex puzzle that many women spend years trying to solve. Unlike men, whose ADHD symptoms remain relatively consistent throughout their adult lives, Women experience a constantly shifting landscape of cognitive function that rises and falls with their hormonal cycles. This creates